And welcome to episode 13 of the Go Earn It podcast. I'm your host, Shane Sparks. Every week, it's another phenomenal guy in the sport. Today, it is a two-time state champion from Bishop Ready High School in Columbus, went on to Ohio State, four-time All-American, three-time NCAA finalist, won a couple of national crowns, two-time Big Ten champion, super impressive resume, one of the all-time greats to ever wrestle at Ohio State, Tommy Rowlands. Tommy, how are you today?
I'm good, Shane. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Looking forward to this. My first question, Tommy, is pretty basic. How did you start in wrestling? But then I would ask you to follow up with this. What hooked you? Like, did you have a moment early on when you fell in love with it, or it just resonated with you like, this is what I'm going to do?
Yeah, I started wrestling. My father was a wrestler in New Jersey, moved to Ohio when he was a senior in high school, experienced wrestling in the state, walked on at Ohio University, wrestled there for a little bit, started coaching high school wrestling, got around some great wrestlers like Kenny Ramsey, who was an All-American at Ohio State, four-time state champion, and kind of just had a desire to expose his only son to the sport. He did, and I enjoyed it. I wouldn't say that I loved it right away, but I did enjoy it, and did it for a few years and never didn't like it. Always wanted to do it. Always wanted to hang out with my dad and my friends. And then I would say around the 5th or 6th grade, I started to realize that the journey of wrestling, the individual self-discovery, the fact that I work out and I practice is just so revealing in terms of how you have to improve yourself. And it's so introspective. And obviously at that age, I couldn't verbalize those feelings or those emotions, but I was drawn into that constant evaluation of yourself in a pretty individual way. And that hooked me in. And by the 7th or 8th grade, it was, quite honestly, it was all I wanted to do. And from that point on, I was dialed in.
You had an amazing career going back to high school. You won a couple of state titles at Bishop Ready High School. What do you remember from your high school career and winning state titles at that time in your life?
Winning a state championship is the first goal, formative goal that I think most kids have. They're teenagers. They're gaining independence as human beings. It's probably the first event they've ever really participated in where there's really some pageantry around the casual fans, local communities, the school that you go to. And so winning my first state title, quite honestly, is one of the best feelings I've ever had in my wrestling career. I was able to go on and wrestle in the Big Ten, compete for Big Ten championships, NCAA championships, travel the world, got to wrestle on the national team, wrestled for Olympic team berth, lots of things. But winning that first state title was, honestly, it's as good as it gets. And so, I coach kids now, and I talk about that. I talk about being a high school state champion and how special that is, and that journey is for anyone. So it's a very special. I'm very fond of my high school career. I was surrounded by great mentors and coaches. My dad, Jim Edwards, my high school coach, Mickey Ballmer. I was just surrounded around a lot of good people that knew how to keep wrestling fun, but also guide me to my goals and make sure that I was seeing my potential. And I'm very grateful for people like that introduced me to the sport in that way at such a young age.
What was the recruiting process like for you?
Man, I started slow in my high school career. I didn't set the world on fire as a freshman in high school, right? I was a little bit late to puberty, lacked a little bit of internal belief at the level that, I wanted to have, but I just kept working and started to grow a little bit, started to get stronger, faster, and bigger and more technical, kind of all at once. So my recruiting process really snowballed, went from somewhat unassuming to a pretty large recruit going into my senior year. And all I ever wanted to do was earn a full scholarship and wrestle in college. And that was my goal. And before I could blink my eyes twice, I was able to visit Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, Oklahoma, and really decide on attending school at some of the best programs in the country, best experiences in the country. So it came on fast. And, I grew up 8 miles from Ohio State, and Russ Hellickson is a legendary upperweight coach and just a good, solid man, always had a great reputation. So it was very hard to lure me away from being a Buckeye. So I ended up committing to Ohio State, and really grateful for that decision.
With this podcast, Tommy, one thing I do, it's kind of like a wrestling match. I mean, we might go collar tie. I might come at you with an underhook. I might go, below the knee on a single. I mean, I'm all over the place. And some things just get triggered, just like a wrestling match. What
It's all
you
good,
said,
man.
maybe, then maybe I come back with something. So you said something about belief, and I want to dive right back into that. When did you start believing? I know this is a loaded question. It's the $1 million question. But when did you start believing? And when you sit back and analyze it a little bit, like, how did it happen? How did the dots connect to spark the self-belief?
I always wanted to be good. I always wanted to be, I always wanted to reach my potential, and I always liked working hard. I never had a problem with it, but I could never connect the amount of work that I did and how much I love the sport with performing at the most critical moments. And I think growing into that, hitting a little bit of puberty, gaining a little bit of independence, and almost being a little mad about not getting what I thought I deserved, and having a little bit of growth running through those veins. I think that whole combination just allowed for me to connect the dots between my work ethic, my skills, and my belief system. It all got aligned at those critical moments when I walked out on the mat, and I just didn't want to be denied. I almost got upset about the fact that I had put in so much work and nothing much was showing for it. And I got a little bit angry at not being where I wanted to be. And I feel like that made a difference. I realized that wrestling, it's a great sport. And I think conducting yourself and having self-control is so critical and important as you translate it to life. But at the end of the day, it is a fight. And when I started to realize that's what it is, and that I had to honor the sport in those ways, but also controlling myself and really just getting into a competitive arrangement, if you will. I think the second I understood that with my work ethic and all those types of things just started to take off. I can't really think of a specific moment. I got third in the state as a sophomore, which is pretty good. But I wanted to win, and I thought I could win. And I went to the Cadet World Team Trials. And at that point, I had never done anything at the national level. And I went out there and won the tournament, and just competed freely, with an open mind, and again, just an attitude to go out there and be my best and not take a back seat. And once I won that event, I guess I never looked back.
Who are the most impactful teammates when you went to Ohio State that really helped steer you in the right path?
I was so fortunate. Some of my best friends still to this day were my college roommates and my college teammates. I was around great mentors, and I was around people that really enjoyed wrestling. My roommates, Johnny Clark, Blake Kaplan, Nick Preston, Casey Kaputska, Jeff Ratliff, Ryan Heber, the list goes on. I had around a lot of people. We were genuinely just good friends, and we liked training. We liked wrestling. And for me, it was good to be around people that just enjoyed what they did. And that allowed for me to just cultivate an attitude of being grateful for my opportunities and just chasing my goals. And that was really, really formative for me in my life.
When you look back, almost 25 years later, what's something you did early on in your career that maybe at that time you didn't realize was going to pay the dividends it did?
Man, when I was in junior high, like I said, I was very late to puberty, but I was a bigger kid. So I had to wrestle grown people, you know what I mean?
Sure.
But I wasn't grown. And I started to lose to a lot of guys that I used to beat. And I started to kind of experience a downward trend in my results. And it was at those moments where I kept working. I kept listening to my mentors. I kept getting positive feedback that you're on the right track. You're going to be great. I didn't even know the dynamics of when you wrestle somebody that's a little bit more mature than you, you're kind of SOL until you mature yourself. And I just kept honing in on my craft and doubling down on a love for the sport and a passion to just be my best. And I feel like that experience over that 2-year period kind of gave me that never ending desire to be my best and take advantage of my opportunities, because I was acutely aware of every now and again it doesn't work out. So when it does work out, you take advantage, you just keep going.
2001, you are the 2 seed, fall in the national final, John Lockhart of Illinois. When you think back to 2001, that season, that tournament, what goes top of mind?
I was a freshman. My goal in the beginning of the year was to be an All-American. I came out of a film session with Russ Ellickson right after the Midlands. I got 3rd place. My only loss was to an open wrestler. And I was watching film, and he was breaking down film, and I was a freshman, 19 years old at the time. And as I was walking out of his office, he goes, "Hey," and I turned around, and he goes, "You know, you can win the nationals, right?" And at that moment, it's like, that's all I needed to hear. And from that point on, it was early January. I just made up my mind that I was going to be a national champion, and I didn't want to accept anything less. I doubled down, kept training. And so, even though I was a freshman, by the time I got to the NCAA finals, the expectation in my mind was to win it. So when I got second and lost in double OT, it was just pure devastation for me. It took me a few months to realize that what I did that season was pretty cool, to make the NCAA finals as a freshman. But it really set the stage for me. Again, I just kept raising that bar and almost like stumbling into understanding what my potential was and what my capabilities were. And I just kept elevating. Every time I realized how far I'd come, I would elevate some more. And things worked out. And just being around great people is so critical, right? You can't manifest all of these ideas on your own in a vacuum. You've got to be in a positive environment. You've got to be around people that believe in you, that care about you, and also know where you want to go and know how to get you to get there. It doesn't mean they have to have been there and done that, but they just got to understand the direction you need to go, and they got to have a familiarity with what you want to do. And I was just fortunate to have those types of people in my life.
If you could go back, Tommy, and talk to yourself heading to Columbus, wrestling for Ohio State, give yourself some advice at that point, what would you tell yourself?
I would say be self-aware and understand that you got to find the environment that's right for you. And there isn't any cookie cutter guarantee to achieve greatness or excellence within yourself. It's different for everybody. And so the people that are the most self-aware on what's good for them, I think find a way to get it done. They're able to just understand and cultivate having the right surroundings to get to where they need to be. And I think having a self-awareness is one of the keys to being great. And, when I chose Ohio State, it was kind of an unpopular opinion. They were last in the Big Ten. I was a big recruit. I was getting recruited by top 5 programs, but I guess I'm complimenting myself in an indirect way, but I feel like I knew it was the right choice for me, and it turned out to be that, at least I think. And I'm very grateful for God's grace and just thinking clearly at moments like that. I mean, you could argue it's, the second biggest decision of your life. Who you marry is probably number 1. Where you live, where you work, and where you go to college, 2, 3, 4 in some other order. So it was a pretty big choice, and I'm glad I made it.
How did you get over that loss as a freshman? You said it took you a few months. What ultimately got you over the hump?
Getting back after it, wrestling on the open circuit as a 19-year-old kid, getting my butt kicked by Stephen Neal in the World Team Trials. He was a 290-pound wildebeest, and I was a 19-year-old, 230-pound baby doe, and he hammered me. He crushed me. And so just getting back in the swing of things and just loving the sport and competing and exposing myself to as much opportunities to get better as I could. I got smacked around by Stephen Neal, and I came back in the stands and I sat down next to my dad, and he goes, "I'm just glad you're okay." It's like the only time I ever lost a match where my dad, instead of saying, You think you could have done better? What do you got to do to get better? It's like, he's just glad I was safe. So, so just getting back into it and just continuing to wrestle, next best thing. You know, we talk about that with the kids that I coach, just always focusing on what's next and onward and upward and just keep wrestling and loving the sport. I mean, if you have a passion to compete and you love the sport, you know, just continuing to go, just keep going. Just keep going, win or lose, keep going, and good things happen.
2002, you win your first NCAA title. Describe standing atop that podium, Sandy Stevens announcing your name. If it was Sandy on that, you know, with your weight class, I mean, can you even put that into words what that's like?
Not really. And like I said, that high school state title is really high on the list. It really is, truly. But NCAA is a little bit of more of a cut above. Just so invested, the amount of work, the depths you got to take yourself to be the wrestler that's even in contention to win that tournament, and then make it through the 3-day event. Just the level of competition and the pressure, and just was a lot of work. And so being able to get to that point and taste that feeling for, you know, a brief moment, because that's all it really is, was incredible. And, you know, I carry that with me the rest of my life. It's, you know, to be able to fail at a high level and succeed at a high level. I mean, they're both beneficial, right? If I had only failed or only succeeded, I don't think I'd be the person that I am today. So, you know, the experiences like that give you an unshakable confidence in believing you can do almost anything. At the same time, if you've been around long enough, you've failed a lot. So you have a unique humility that on any given day, you know, you can get taken out. And I think that living with that balance has really helped me. And so I'm grateful that I was able to experience those types of things in my life.
Throughout your career, how did you deal with nerves?
Man, I mean, I everyone's been bit by the nerve bug, right? Everybody's underperformed because they let it get to them, and not everybody, but a lot of people have been able to harness the sincerity that they have for the sport that usually shows up as nerves and control it, right? But the way I dealt with nerves was acknowledging that it's okay to be nervous, because it's very important to me. If I've invested a significant portion of my life into one thing, and it's going to be rolled up and defined in a 6-minute period or a 7-minute moment, of course I should be nervous. And of course the other person I'm wrestling is probably nervous. And being able to harness those nerves and control it, not let it control you, but you control it, you know, it teaches you a lot. And I was able to figure that out, but it's never perfect, right? I've got plenty of moments in my life where I wish I could have had better control of myself.
This is probably a 3-hour question. And I'm just going to go here because I think this stuff fascinates me. You beat Steve Mocco in 2002. Describe that rivalry.
Man, it was a big rivalry, right?
One of the best ever.
I think in today's day and age, with like the Big Ten Network and social media, and the accessibility to wrestlers, you know, 2 heavyweights from Iowa and Ohio State getting after. And we wrestled 19 times in our career. I got 8, he got 11. I mean, that's almost close to even, right? And I beat him for some Big Ten titles and NCAA titles. He beat me for some Big Ten titles. I beat him for a world team berth. He beat me for an Olympic team berth. I mean, we've crushed each other's souls almost equally. You know, full transparency, I feel like he got the notch up. That Olympic team is that's a moment, you know, that was important to the both of us. And you know, I'm grateful for him as a rival. I believe in the spirit of competition, and I believe that wrestling really is you against yourself. So for me to see him or speak to him or be around him, it would be like water off a duck's back. It's no big deal. It's just he brought the best out of me, and I feel like I brought the best out of him. I mean, he'd have to be the judge of that, but you know, I think we kept each other sleeping with one eye open for almost a decade, and it's a great rivalry, and I'm grateful for those types of encounters in my life, and it's shaped me.
Do you ever talk to him?
You know, sort of. His son's he's got two sons. One's my oldest son's age, one's like a sophomore. We keep in touch a little bit on Instagram. We'll, you know, congratulate each other when our kids do something fun. I saw him a few years ago out at the US Open, and we spoke for like 5 minutes. And I don't necessarily keep in touch, but there's nothing that would stop me from having a conversation with him if I saw him walking down the street or at a wrestling event. I mean, it's just, it is what it is. You know, I poured my soul into the sport. So did he. And you win some, you lose some. And, you know, the regrets are always attached to what you could have done, not who beat you and why they beat you. It's about you. It's about, you know, it's about your journey and what you could have, should have, would have done. We've all got those demons, but it's not attached to an opponent.
If you and him were to sit down and talk about the rivalry and look at certain matches and just have a real open conversation on the relationship you guys had as rivals, what are a couple of things you'd be really interested to know?
Man, did I keep you up at night as much as you kept me up at night? You know, I mean, it was fierce. It was a fierce rivalry, and you know, it's Big Ten titles, NCAA titles, world teams, Olympic teams. I mean, we wrestled in all those types of events, and numerous times, not just one time. So, you know, it was a transformative experience. I mean, I trained for a lot of people, but there was probably a 10-year period where I trained for him. And so, you know, just, it's like we're 42 now, or I'm 42. It's like, I could reflect on that now with a little bit more peace and calm and just kind of go through it like it's a video game instead of like, it's like my entire being is on the line, which is how I felt at the time.
Your career, Tommy, is so interesting because you've done some amazing things in this sport. Like, I mean, amazing things at the same time. Like everybody that's probably towed the line to get your heart ripped out a time or two and it's shoved down your throat. We love the sport. We keep coming back. Your junior year, you get injured, I believe take 6th, and then you come back the next year and you win it again. I mean, showing some real guts in that situation. Another period where you had to probably find yourself, do some soul searching. What comes to mind when you reflect on that time period?
Yeah, I won the nationals as a sophomore. My junior year, I had a tough year. I definitely made a mistake. I won the nationals at 230 pounds as a sophomore, and Mocco, everyone's saying he's weighing 300 pounds in the off season, and I just bought into, I need to get bigger too. And I got up to like 255, and it was just a sloppy 255. I lost some of my cardio. I lost some of my timing. I was quick. I had some technique, and just the balance was off. So I had a tough year, and I figured out I gotta get back down to my fighting weight. So my junior year, I got down to like 230, and I was wrestling great by that time and thought I was going to give a run again. And I think I was in line to make the NCAA finals, at least in my opinion. And it got cut short because I snapped my ankle on half in the quarters. I was up 11, or I was up like 9-2 or something, and I only ended up winning 11-9. I finished the match, tried to wrestle the semis, couldn't. It's just a tough experience, you know. You have everything taken away from you, but I had to heal up. I had to take a few months off. It was that bad of a high ankle sprain, and you know, you got one shot at it your senior year, and I made the most of it. I did a great job and got my body in gear, got my mind in gear, and really had a great season my senior year.
If you could have a do-over, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a wrestling match per se, and maybe just answer the question with some of the stuff with your body type. When you look back at your college career, even after, you know, post-college, if you could have a do-over and handle a situation differently, what would it be?
There's no question what I would handle differently is when I graduated from college, I was 23 years old. I had aspirations to start a family and go into business. And training for the Olympics, believe it or not, I was almost, I don't want to say ashamed, but I felt like I was putting my life on hold. I felt like I was sacrificing in order to train for the Olympics, instead of feeling like it was the most amazing privilege and gift have the opportunity to chase the Olympic dream, I felt like I was pausing my life. And I enjoyed the journey. I got to travel the world and wrestle on the national team, but I wish I would have understood how great of a privilege it is to have that opportunity. And instead of feeling like I was putting my life on hold, feeling like I was on the ride of my life. Because now I have a family and I'm in business, and you know, it's forever. You know, business is forever. Having a family, having loved ones, it's the most amazing thing in the world, but it goes on forever. And so to focus on your goals and chase an Olympic dream, I mean, that's just such an admirable journey, regardless of the outcome. I wish I would have appreciated it more at that time. And I see people like David Taylor and Kyle Snyder and Jordan Burroughs, Kyle Dake, you know, their greatness, I think, is magnified by the fact that they understand their journey they're on. They understand how special it is, and they just don't look back. And at that time, I just kind of wanted to do it all. I wanted to have a family. I wanted to be in business. I wanted to train for the Olympics. And I wish I would have had a little bit more of a singular focus or appreciation for that journey.
When you look at your career, what loss hurt the most? And what was there a loss that taught you the most?
It's the same thing.
It's the same
You know what
thing.
I mean?
Okay.
So yeah, I lost in the best of 3 matches in the third match of the 2008 Olympic trials. I was ranked third in the world at the time. I had beaten a couple of world medalists that year. Mocco was ranked 5th in the world. It was a very, very mild upset that he beat me off the Olympic team, but at the time I was favored, and it crushed me. I mean, it crushed me to the core, and I really had to put to the test all the things that I've been taught, and at that point, all the things I'd said about, is wrestling really something that extends beyond the outcome or the result? Is it really something that's more than just getting your hand raised? And I had to put that to the test, and I'm thankful for having great people around me and having a faith life, having a great wife, and family life, to where I bounced back pretty quick. But that's the most formative experience I've ever had in my life, hands down, more so than winning the NCAAs, more so than any success I've had. You know, I had to really understand that I'm gaining the full 360 degrees perspective of what this journey is all about, because I'm on my knees without much, you know, understanding of what's next. And I was able to really search within myself, thanks to being around a lot of people, and just understand that, you know, the sun does come up. You know what I mean? And it really is about getting the most out of yourself, and not necessarily the outcome. But if the outcome doesn't matter, you won't get the most out of yourself. So it's kind of chicken or the egg thing. So the outcome matters, but that experience was a gut wrenching experience, but I'm grateful that it happened.
You stepped away for what, almost 2 years?
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, what brought you back?
Just knowing, you know, at that point, I started to realize that, you know, hey, maybe I'm not a victim. Maybe training for the Olympics is the greatest experience you could ever have, and that window is gonna close soon. And my wife supported me, and I got back into it and just got busy training. And I'm really grateful that I did that, because when I stopped wrestling in 2012, when I was an Olympic alternate again for the second time, it wasn't devastating. How there was a peace within myself that I had run my race. You know what I mean? And it's like I came up short for my goals, but I mean, I think a lot of people came up short. You know, it's like you could argue Cale Sanderson feels that way. Why else would he come out of retirement 7 years after he wins the Olympics in 2011? If there's not some itch he feels like he hasn't scratched yet. You know, so it's like everyone feels like they could have done a little bit more. And John, I'm in that group too.
During quiet times, when you reflect on your career, where does your mind normally go?
Grateful, greatest sport in the world. Want to share it, want to pass it on to my sons, my nephews, all the kids in our community. I just want them to see the sport the same way that I do, and understand that no matter what, you win if you're fully invested in this sport. And it can teach you, it can change you. And I just think it's a great sport in the world. I don't think there's anything else to say about that.
What's the most impactful conversation you ever had with Russ? You gave us one earlier, maybe that was it, but I wanted to ask you that question. Any conversation with him that you'll remember till you're 90 years old?
Yeah, I'm not just saying this. He was so good with words, and he was so attuned and plugged in to speaking to us in ways that kept us encouraged and motivated, that I can't pinpoint any one conversation. I mean, he was a constant highlight reel of motivation and inspiration and encouragement, and also accountability in ways that just, I'm very grateful for.
You got a good corner story with Coach Hellickson during a match? Anything you said in a corner that you remember, or any match that happened where?
No, but I will tell you one thing that I did. And I can't believe I missed it. I don't know why it popped into my head, but I didn't bring up Jesse Lang, who's my business partner and one of my best friends at Rudis, as a guy that I shared college with. I don't know why it dropped out, but that's just, I'm just thinking about all the people that really shaped my experience. And, I don't know why, I don't know how that happened, but he's my business partner. I communicate with him every day. So, just all those people, just so grateful for that experience. And Russ kept it together for us and gave us a great experience. So,
what's the most difficult conversation you ever had with a teammate at any level?
I don't know. I mean, I would say Jesse Lang had a real bum ankle when we were fifth year seniors. At the time, he was training hard and had the potential to do some things as a senior, and kind of got robbed of that opportunity with misfortune. Had a really bad high ankle sprain. Tried to wrestle in the Big Tens, didn't work out so well, and just trying to console someone that saw the end of their career come up short. They almost got robbed of an opportunity. I mean, those were tough moments to handle and be with a teammate on. So those are some tough conversations, because you're learning how to be there for someone, even though you got to go do your thing, in the same breath. You got to go do your thing that's important to you, but you're sharing that journey with other people. You're bleeding together, sweating together, living together, and what they're working on gets cut short for things that are outside of their control, and you got to keep doing your thing. It's a tough balance. You almost feel guilty. You almost feel guilty for still having your opportunity. And so being in those environments was difficult.
You had so much success. Was there a conversation ever that was tough with you and a coach at any level, or maybe you were getting off track, or whatever it might be that was tough?
Historically, if you're the number one ranked American, you wrestle in the World Cup. And I went to Russia about 6 weeks before the World Cup, wrestled bad. And this was in the Olympic year. And Kevin Jackson called me up 3 days after we got back from Russia and said, "Hey, I'm gonna take Mocco to World Cup. I'm gonna keep you back." And it's probably the first time I've ever really been mad, you know what I mean, at a coach's decision. And but I tell you what, it shaped me, and he's probably right looking back now that I'm a 42-year-old man and I'm kind of a coach. I wasn't wrestling very well, and you got to do what you got to do. You know what I mean? So it motivated me. It changed me. It helped me get on a better track. But I think it's the first time I really took a coach on. I called him up and just said, I don't like your decision. I don't agree with it. And he said, "I didn't expect you to, but I'm going to do it, and I'm here for you. And I want what's best for the United States of America. So if that's you, that's great. If it's Mocco, that's great too." And so you just learn the brass tacks of how things go, right? And but that's the first time I ever really challenged a coach, I think.
Okay. What separates good from great?
Man, that's a tough question. And I don't really know the answer. I mean, I read Good to Great by Jim Collins. I mean, there's a lot of anecdotal things that I could say. about what makes good from great. But, to me, when I see greatness in someone, specifically in wrestling, I see someone that just loves what they do and is consumed by the journey of self-improvement more so than a specific outcome or achieving a certain objective. They just have this eternal flame of passion that just says, I want to get better every day. I want to improve myself every day. Win or lose, I go forward. It's the next best thing all the time. And, getting around people like that are also blessed with a little talent, and they're in the right environment. And I think that's greatness.
When you look at the sport, and everybody's different, what works for one guy might not work for somebody else. Everybody's got a style of wrestling. You got to figure it out, solve the puzzle. But in your opinion, what's something in the sport that you think might be a little overrated? And then on the flip side, what do you think might be a little underrated?
And what do you mean in what aspect?
You can take that question, Tommy, any way you want. It could be any aspect. You could say, hey, I'll hear this sometimes. Mitch Clark, take top. I love top wrestling. And I think finishing periods on top is critical. I think a couple mat returns is how you can drain a guy mentally. I think that's important. Some people look at me and they're like, mat returns don't even score you points. I think it's overrated. So, I've heard that before.
I'll tell you, I don't know if overrated is the word, but I think a pin is overrated as compared to a technical fall.
Everybody knows when you text somebody who the man is.
Yeah. And let me be clear. A pin is the most exciting result you could ever watch in wrestling, but it is not the most dominant, in my opinion. It is beating someone by technical superiority by 15 plus points. You don't get caught and teched. You just don't. You don't get caught and teched. And so, I understand the merit in rendering your opponent helpless on the mat with two shoulder blades pinned to the mat, but ultimately it's a positional achievement. It's not necessarily explicit dominance over somebody else. However, scoring 15 points than the other guy is, in my opinion. So I wish that technical falls were worth the same as falls, and I wish forfeits were worth 7 points, because I want there to be more of a penalty, specifically in college wrestling. I want there to be more of a penalty to forfeit than just getting pinned.
You were at the dual meet with Ohio State, Michigan 2019, came down to heavyweight, fun dual meet. What's your most memorable dual meet as an athlete?
Man, I was fortunate to wrestle. I was a sophomore. Ohio State was on the up and up. We went to the national duels. We made it to the semis. National duels were at Ohio State. We had never beaten Oklahoma. We were severe underdogs. Came down to the final weight. Our team is down 17-13, and I'm ranked second in the country, and I'm wrestling Leon Crump, who's ranked third. And I gotta basically tech him or pin him. And here I am bashing on pins, and I ended up pinning the guy. But it went to overtime, and I hit him with an underhook throw by. I took him down to his back, and he paused and rested on his back for a split second. And I climbed up his waist, and they called the pin because, as you know, it's a continuous movement if you're on your back, even in overtime. And I pinned him to win the dual meet in the national dual semifinals, and that was definitely my favorite dual meet experience. No question about that.
What's your favorite Big Ten championship memory?
For me or for anybody?
You know what? Give me one of each.
I was out of wrestling, but watching Lance Palmer beat Metcalf for the Big Ten title. That was a big time win. That was pretty cool. And I love Brett Metcalf, by the way. I think he's great. I like Lance Palmer too. And I'm a Buckeye, so that was a cool win. my first Big Ten title was as a sophomore. I beat Mocco in double overtime. He locked hands. The Brands brothers were yipping at me for taking an injury time in the third period because I got the wind completely knocked out of me when Mocco threw me out of bounds. And it was nice to win in double OT and, get the job done because when they were jawing at me. So that was fun.
What's something in wrestling within the sport that you're most passionate about?
I'm passionate about how the sport's presented. I'm passionate about advancing the sport. I'm a partner in a leading apparel and footwear company. So making sure the sport is presented and marketed and promoted in a way that represents the greatness of it is something that I'm always paying attention to. And I feel like, the company I'm involved in does a wonderful job of channeling and facilitating that thought that it is the greatest sport in the world. And so I'm always trying to present wrestling to my neighbor, to a kid I coach's parents who don't know the sport, or in our business as we promote the brand and the sport in the most positive light. I'm always trying to spread the word that it's a great activity. And that's something that I'm passionate about.
Awesome, Tommy. We're going to go Matt returns, some rapid fire stuff. I'm just going to return you. It's going to be hard to get you in the air. Some might just be going front trip stuff to get you down. What is one person, dead or alive, that you would love to meet that you've never met?
Alexander Karelin.
The Russian.
Yeah, one of the arguably the best ever. So it'd be cool to meet him. I've also never met Bovaisar Satiev, who I think is the most technical wrestler ever, arguably the greatest wrestler ever. When I watch him, I still watch him on YouTube every now and again. I mean, it's like watching poetry almost. So that's someone I'd like to meet as well.
Your biggest pet peeve?
People who are maniacal about cutting weight. That's a tough one for me.
Who's the guy, Tommy, that you knew you'd always beat, but it was never going to be easy? Like that guy, like I know I can beat this guy, I always do, but it's going to be no fun. Who stands out?
I would say it's not a guy I knew I could always beat, but because he beat me before. He's beat me twice. But when I was at Ohio State, my redshirt year, I was a big time recruit, and I wrestled a walk-on from Penn State that was, I think, a one-time state qualifier in Pennsylvania named Pat Cummins, and I tech faulted him, beat him by 15 points at the Cleveland State Open, and really kind of had my way with him. And you fast forward 5 years later, he beat me in the All-Star meet as a senior. I beat him by 1 point in the Big Ten finals, and then I beat him in the NCAA finals by 1 or 2 points. So, we wrestled like 8, 9, 10 times, and it started with a tech fall at the Cleveland State Open. And then it ended with, kind of like a 500 record against him in the last 3 or 4 matches of our career and competing for an NCAA championship. So it was bizarre to feel someone chasing you from way far in the back. And by the time you get to the most important matches of your life, he's right up your you know what. You know what I mean? And it was just a testament to him, because I came in highly regarded and I worked hard and did well, but he caught up, and it was an all-out war. And I thought he's a great opponent, and that's just one that was just a tough out. That was a mental journey for me to kind of reconcile how much he was catching up.
Favorite movie?
Tough. Probably Braveheart or Gladiator.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
What picture do you have on your cell phone right now? What's the screensaver picture?
Picture of my daughter and I. So
there you go.
I got 3 sons, but only 1 daughter. She's 17, and all my kids are near and dear to me, but there's a unique relationship that you have with your daughter. So
she like a junior in high school, senior in high school?
Junior in high school, soccer player.
Good deal. What's the best concert, Tom, you've ever been to?
Zach Bryan. Zach Bryan, my wife got me Zach Bryan tickets in Las Vegas this past August. Incredible performer. Really commands the crowd. And awesome. Now I go to the CMA Fest every year in Nashville, and I see a litany of performers over a 3-day period every year. So you could argue that's the greatest show I've ever been to, but just one individual artist, Zach Bryan, he was impressive. I'm going back to see him again this coming June.
Who's the coolest person you've ever met?
Man, that's a tough one. I think Jordan Burroughs is pretty cool.
Yeah,
I mean, I think he might be the definition of cool. So meeting him, being around him, it's like, man, I just feel like a loser.
You got a favorite sports team? Favorite player?
I love John Elway. I'm a Denver Broncos fan. He's one of my favorites. Nolan Ryan, great pitcher. I always admired him when I was a kid. And those are some of my favorite sports guys. Yeah.
I saw this on like a Kyle Dake Instagram, and I think it's a fascinating question. I asked it to myself, and of course didn't know what the answer would be. I have to really sit and think about it. This is going to be really tough. Okay. If you had to relive one day of your life, what day would that be?
Oh my God.
I think that's the question. Is just fascinating. Because you got one day, because be really, I mean, you got one day. So you're
Man,
not.
I don't know the answer to that. I would say the day my first child was born might have been the first, which is my daughter Ellie. I mean, that's a pretty transformational moment in anyone's life. You know what I mean? For me. So, my life changed the second that happened. I'm not saying it didn't change when I got married, didn't change when good things have happened. I mean, there's a lot of life-changing moments, but it's almost like when she was born, it's like, oh, now I know why I was put on earth. You know what I mean?
Sure,
So
exactly.
that was a pretty big day. So reliving that would probably be pretty special.
Where do you keep your NCAA and Big Ten wall charts? Where are those at?
Oh man, they are, they used to be in storage, but now that I think about it, I think they're at Rudis hanging on
Okay.
in one of the offices. I gave them to Rudis. They'll get better use over there with those things than in my office. I have an office, and the only thing I keep out that references my wrestling career in my entire house is my 2 Big Ten and NCAA rings. I have a little box, and they're sitting in my office, and it's not like I look at them or anything, but it kind of fits the home, and I don't want to put up like big, huge posters or brackets or anything. It's kind of. I'm not saying it's weird, but it's not my style to do that in the house. You know what I mean? So
Sure. Yeah. Outside of your family, and maybe it's what you just said, is that your like most prized possession? That box?
Yeah, my family. I mean, my family is everything to me. So I don't think that makes me much different than anyone else watching this, but yeah, it's the center of my life.
So when is there going to be a Tommy Rowlands shoot?
For me? Man. Yeah, no, Rudis is pretty tough on who gets a shoe. You know what I mean? So you gotta go to some heights that I wasn't able to get to.
Final question for you. If you had to take a cross-country trip in a car with 3 people that you've never met, who are you taking on that trip?
Wrestling people?
Can be anybody. Can be anybody.
Oh man, that's tough. I'm drawing a blank on that. I'm struggling, Shane. That I've never met. Man, they got to be living?
Not necessarily. We'll let you go with whatever you want.
Abe Lincoln, we talk about how divisive our country is right now. We're not at war with each other. So he
Yeah.
was I mean, we might in our own minds, but we're not killing people from one state over, right? We're not fighting them. And so he was a leader in quite a unique time. So he'd be in the car with me. Oh man. I don't know. I can't think beyond that.
Take me and Charlie Agazzino. We'll call it a day.
That's good. Yeah. Well, I've met you guys, but Abe Lincoln,
That's
Charlie Agazzino, and you. It'd be a good combo. I like that. I like that.
Well, this has been a blast, Tommy. Really just enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks a lot, Shane. Appreciate everything.